you just started operations, I don't know, a year ago.
Right.
But if we see that historically time after time, that doesn't work, why do we continue on that?
Yes.
Because when we acquired these buildings and we
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm just stepping out of a meeting and trying to get onto this one, so just bear with me one moment. Okay, got it figured out. Okay, how's everybody doing? I'm gonna unmute everybody for just a moment as soon as I figure out where I'm at. Well, maybe not. Unmute. I lost it. But anyway, can somebody just let me know everybody can hear me? Either through the chat or if you unmute yourself.
I can hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you. All right. And then 1, 2. Okay. Oh, good. Looks like we're getting a good group today. So.
Lisa's here.
Hi, Lisa. This might end up being a very short meeting because we're just doing a review, and then if anyone has some suggestions. Can everybody see the screen with the program standards front page? Yeah.
I'm on my phone today, so
okay.
It'll take me a few minutes to see it.
Well, you know what? Then that helps me because I'll read it out loud when we get there. Albert, are you seeing the screen that's shared? It's either going to be a screen with my kid's picture on it or the screen with the program standards. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Albert. All right. So you can all unmute yourselves if you want to participate in the conversation whenever you're ready to do that. But what I want to do is scroll and just for a quick recap, last week we had a good discussion on the courses and we went through those different courses and we had faculty on the phone that and everybody felt pretty comfortable with the courses. So if you want to hear that dialogue, you can go to the YouTube link and listen to what that meeting consisted of. And if you have questions or concerns with any of it, feel free to reach out to me. So we took a vote in that meeting, which was unanimous, to keep the courses that we had proposed, or that I had proposed with the help of faculty. And so we're going to scroll down to this no harassment policy. Now, this is something that the Division of Apprenticeship Standards requires in the program standards, and so this is just a blanket policy. Because this is a multi-employer committee or multi-employer program, while every employer may have their own policy, that is also applicable as an apprentice is the employee of the employer. However, a blanket no harassment policy just informs the apprentice that if they are feeling harassed in any sort of way, what sort of steps they can take. in regard to it being a program. So it's something that's in the state regulations regarding apprenticeship, that it's a requirement that apprentices know where to go. And this really developed, I believe, out of the building trades and construction industry, when maybe women were being harassed on the job, things like that, and just having a place for them to go where they feel protected, and then they're not going to get terminated by having spoken up about how they were feeling in, being harassed maybe out there in the field. So that's sort of where it came from. And because it is in the regulations, even though employers in this environment may be a little more tuned in to harassment policy, we still have to have it in the program standards. So I'll just read it out loud for those of you on the phone. It's the policy of educators. Just take this video off. I feel like I'm having to. Nope, maybe that's not the best idea. Never mind. It is the policy of the educators, advisors, coordinators, and subscribed employers of the California Apprenticeship for Human Resources Professionals Committee and its program to fully support the law prohibiting harassment and discrimination. The prohibition includes harassment and or discrimination based on race, color, national origin, ancestry, religion, sex, marital status, handicap, mental condition, age, as well as sexual harassment. And so this was a blanket policy written a long time ago. So there may be some things we need to be adding, and that's why I'm really happy to have you all on the phone. Anyway, I'll keep going. The policy endeavors to maintain a workplace free of any such harassment and discrimination. Impermissible harassment may take many forms, including but not limited to verbal conduct, and then it gives a subscription of some verbal conduct, visual conduct, again, it has some examples of that, physical conduct, threats or demands to submit sexual requests, so talking specifically in regard to sexual requests and favors, and then retaliation for those who've reported or encouraged the reporting of any such harassment or discrimination. Any person, whether apprentice, employer, employee, supervisor, trustee, instructor, or otherwise, who is found to have engaged in such conduct while participating in the program will be subject to immediate and severe discipline, and when appropriate, will be terminated. So this includes apprentices who may be harassing other people as well. And I even recommend this being a form for some apprenticeships. I would recommend having the apprentice sign it so they're aware of what's acceptable. But any person who feels that he or she is being harassed or discriminated against, or who is aware of the harassment or discrimination, should report it immediately. And so this is by contacting, by contacting the program manager, and that should be me in this case, or the Human Resources Department located at the place of employment, or at the, maybe they should say at the apprentice's place of employment. And you may prefer that, so we can switch that around or change the verbiage there how you feel would make more sense for what your rules and regulations are. If unresponsive, the apprentice is to report the incident to their chain of command in writing, in person, by phone, or by email. I'm hoping that some of this reads very similar to what your own policy reads. A thorough, objective, and, if appropriate, confidential investigation will be undertaken. If harassment and or discrimination are found to have occurred, prompt and appropriate remedial action will be taken. No person will be retaliated against for reporting harassment or discrimination or participating in an investigation thereof. So that's the gist of it. Again, hopefully it sounds much like a policy you already have in place, or perhaps part of your employee handbook. And then feel free to jump in if there's any of this that you're ready to comment on, or provide feedback, or you're looking for changes or want to suggest anything at all. Or feelings. Again, I did mention in the beginning, this could be a very short call. So hopefully it rings very similar to what you already have in place. If you,
I think that there have been some updates to the law around other prohibitions. I will need to look at our policy at PG&E because I know that there's additional things around domestic partners, around identity, you know, like sexual preference and things of that sort. I may not be calling it properly, and I apologize that it's not, the words aren't coming out for me right now, but there are things that are within the new law.
mm-hmm. Well, and this is, again, this was quite a few years ago, so if you want to take this and do some sort of comparison and submit some other language, and then what we could do on the next call, because the next call will also be a short call, or it just doesn't have a whole lot of discussion that needs to take place. What we could do is carry this over to the next meeting, presenting some additional language that we may want to insert. It's not a problem. Again, all of you, these will be employees of any of your organizations, perhaps. So I guess what I want to keep in mind is if it's an employee, if it's an apprentice with an employer who isn't part of this committee, because we will have other employers who want to have an apprentice and that will become their employee, but maybe that person isn't on this committee and doesn't choose to be part of that work, part of the administrative work. Perhaps if they're going to have an apprentice and they didn't have a policy in place, I can't imagine that being the case legally, but perhaps their policy wasn't up to par. You know, we have something to fall back on to protect this committee or protect this work and program. So if you want to, you know, kind of play with this a little bit over the next week or so, and then submit some suggestions, maybe by email to the whole group, and then we can spend, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes on the next call inserting any additional language to really tighten it up. And I don't know how anybody else feels, so don't let me be the one driving all of it. I feel like I may know a little bit about apprenticeship, but all of you know a whole lot more about these laws and regulations than I could possibly know.
I just found ours. It's around gender identity and gender expression and those types of things, as well as language with around bullying. So I will, I don't want to plagiarize because I don't have authorization to just provide our document, but I will take it. Do you mind sending what you have there out as an email, and we can kind of add things to it?
How would I do that? Okay, I can, let me do this.
I guess you would send it as an email to all of us.
I can absolutely. I'm going to send all of this to everyone, and then right after this call, and then you guys can all feel free to add some track change verbiage, or if you want to use track changes. If you don't, maybe just put it in red if you don't know how to use track changes. Some way where we can identify what's changed, and then I'll sort of try to carve out some time to make some comparisons to whatever you all want to submit, and then we can do some side-by-sides and go through that in the next call. if that works. Again,
that sounds good.
I learned that I have a controlling personality in a workshop, in a leadership training, so I'm trying to give some of that back a little bit. It's a good thing, but I have to try to balance it better. So you all didn't really need to know all that, but anyway.
I tend to speak up as well. That's
okay.
What I call it.
Thank you. We'll just call it a strength.
Yeah.
A little bit of an extrovert in me. I don't know. So I'll take this and then I'll resend it out to all of you. And just feel free to take some time on it. And unless anyone else has anything else they'd like to add on this call, since we have some time, we may even perhaps jump into what I had scheduled for next meeting, just so that the next meeting doesn't carry on longer than what we need it to. Does anyone else have anything they want to add in regard to this topic? And so, well, maybe I'll ask this, Albert. I know you and I had a good conversation a week or so ago, and since your work is in, since what you do is part of a staffing agency, and you do have contractual agreements with various employers, I'm assuming you're kind of familiar with having maybe your own policy in regard to employees of the staffing firm versus what those individual employers have as a policy. Do you find that everybody sort of goes along with a similar language, or do you have anything you'd like to add in regard to how you balance that between your employees that are off on other sites versus what those employers' rules are?
Every situation is going to be different. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Every situation is going to be a little bit different. But I'm more than happy to share some of our processes that we have in place. I just have to check with that I can share those in. But every site, every department is going to have a unique situation when it comes to that.
Great. Yeah, and I don't think it. I guess where I was going with that was, it seems like it is going to be layered in many cases because employers should have their own policy. So this is just a layering over that, and yet we definitely want to tighten it up as much as we can to make sure we're compliant with the law. Now, the DAS is not going to be looking at our harassment policy and comparing it with legal requirements. They just want to see that there's one in place. So we just need to make sure that it has enough information in there where an apprentice will understand what's required of them. Because remember, again, this requirement all came out of the construction industry. So if you can imagine having 10 apprentices out on a work site in construction, and they're all coming from different backgrounds, and maybe they're different age groups, different generations, and so I think it makes sense in a situation like that, especially where one individual could feel bullied, or just because maybe they were having a harder time with certain types of work, or who knows what. And so even in the case of apprentices, it may seem that they're new and they're learning a new job, but it doesn't mean that they themselves are aware that they could be possibly harassing someone else. So just keeping all of that in mind. Okay, let's see, real quick, I want to look at what was on our agenda for next week.
Hi, Karina, this is Carla. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I wanted to make a point. I think it's really important to also emphasize the fact that, just like new employees, right, if they're new to the workforce, they sometimes feel a little intimidated to speak up, even though they know they're supposed to. And I come from also a construction background, and I will tell you that education, not just once a year, et cetera, but even if it's a reminder every couple of months, did you know, tips, et cetera, those really went a long way in terms of prevention, because it's something that, well, yeah, at one point they talked about it. What did they say the process is? I don't remember. Versus, yes, this is what we are supposed to do if encountered with the situation as such.
Yeah, sure. Reiteration is obviously how I remember everything. So if we, you know, we could, as a committee, after we get up and running and we've got apprentices and we're managing that, we could make decisions on policy, and we actually do need to create some rules and regulations at some point. And within that, it might be that we provide, you know, apprentice maybe a webinar training, or, you know, we could do certain things like that if we feel that the employers themselves don't have something like that in place always. So just some of it's going to be stuff that we pick up as we go along, and, you know, oh, we didn't see that coming, how do we address it? So some of it's a work in progress, rules and regulations document that's always evolving, just like in many of your workplaces. And then some of it might be where we take and just, you know, create some policy based on all of our experiences right out of the gate. So we've got some different options there, but there's just getting this initial program put together and submitted to the state is just one thing. And then the next work from there is in my grant funding, going out and doing the outreach to try to add employers to the group and get apprentices up and enrolled and working. So I'll be doing some of that work in the background, but we will meet as a committee, maybe quarterly or whatever works best for everybody, and start to develop and manage the program as a collaborative group based on what, you know, how we feel we want it to go, and what outcomes we're looking for. And we may need to consider all of that as we go along. What are those outcomes? What do we all want out of this? What is the best case scenario of an HR professional? What are we actually trying to develop in this profession? And maybe some of that even includes, you know, do we want these individuals at the end of their apprenticeship to take the HR exam? And I'm trying to think of the right level of that one. What's the lowest level? Is it just the professional exam?
Yes, I think you're thinking of the PHRA.
Yes, I think that's the one. And I'm in acronym hell right now. So I feel like if, you know, those are some of the things we can be discussing and determining what do we want this to really look like? What do we want these individuals to achieve, other than just a state certificate and having took these courses and having the work experience validation. There may be more we're looking for. For example, electricians, they have a 5-year apprenticeship. They take some 800 hours of education that's built into that program. And then they also take an electrical exam that's a state exam that they're required to pass before they can actually receive their journeyman certificate. So there may be some other things we want to add and other elements, and we want to add to all of this. And what's great about this group is that we're all able to do that. Like, we all started it, so we get to continue that work for as long as you all want to volunteer to do that. Regardless if you have an apprentice ever, it won't make that won't make the difference. It's that, what do we really want to achieve as an industry who are supervising and leading this particular profession in the workplace through this program? And I know I can tell you this much: the state is very excited to receive this program. I talked to someone at the Department of Labor recently who's looking to maybe use this program and adopt it to the state's HR department. So this could really become something great, and I'm just really proud of how far we've come and getting this thing submitted. Hopefully next month, it's the goal anyway. And then first week of March would be is looking like a possibility, and then seeing how it develops from there. Nothing is fast with the state though, so don't have expectations. But I feel like we'll be able to roll it out as early as summer and invite other employers into apprenticeship and hire apprentices and work the program. And there's some forms. In fact, we can look over some of that right now. and take just a few minutes to do that. And we can also do a quick review next week at our next meeting. But along with the harassment policy, the last couple of documents in this packet that we'll be submitting are just the forms. So these are the required employer forms. We may have touched on this slightly in our very first call, but the first form is an employer who's pledging that they'll recruit and select apprentices basically according to the law. So fairness and equal opportunity. So and some of that's built into the California Code of Regulations and Apprenticeship, but it's the same language. So they're pledging that they're going to meet that standard. And so this form is required by the state for every new employer that wants to sign on and have apprentices. They'll sign this form because you all and all employers will be hiring their own apprentices. Nobody's saying to you, here, take this apprentice, or this is not a placement service. This is an opportunity if an employer wants to hire and train an apprentice of their own to then become a full-fledged HR professional at their organization. The next form is the employer subscription agreement, and this should probably be attachment E, and then the pledge, the EEO pledge should probably be attachment F, but that's okay. I might switch those around. But the employer subscription agreement attachment, this is when a new employer wants to sign into the program. And the reason why somebody would want to do that is because the alternative is to have their own program. So an employer could say, I want to develop an HR apprenticeship program. And I have a couple of those actually right now that take our courses, which is sort of what made me start to think maybe this could be a larger program as a multi-employer program. And so that's why we're here today. But those individual programs took about 6 months to get the approval, and all the work that needed to be done that we're all doing in this last couple of months, and then going to the state and then waiting through the state process. So if they were looking to get an apprentice hired in the next 30 days, that's not likely. But having an approved multi-employer program, instead of having to complete all of this work, they just sign the subscription agreement. They let us know what wages they're going to pay. And let's see, they may change the name of the occupational title slightly based on some of the options that we had discussed prior. But it's their employer name, address, phone number, what are their wages. They may have different periods. That's fine too, but the program hours and the time, all of that stays consistent and the same as what we've already decided in the standards. Same with the classes and the work processes. Although they can select here if they want to have a longer or shorter probationary period, and they can select here if the work processes differ than the work processes that we went over a couple of meetings ago. So when we tried to, and I'll show you what that looks like just as a reminder. When we went through this work training of the on-the-job training and the hours, there may be a company that says, you know what, my HR folks, what's some of the titles that we determined? My HR, I don't know, specialist that I want to train as an apprentice doesn't have, doesn't do any of this, tracking benefit plans. Maybe that individual won't do that work. So perhaps their work processes need to look a little different. And if that's the case, they are welcome to submit their own work processes that look, or at least in this sort of a format. And so they'll select, or they'll check this box, see attached, if that is the case. Otherwise, they'll select or check the box C standards because we already have it outlined. And I'm hoping I'm making sense. It makes sense in my head.
Yes.
Slow down, just let me know. And then they can check this box. I would like to be considered as an employer representative on the apprenticeship committee. That's our committee. And so if an employer selects yes here when they submit to me this form, I bring the form in front of the next committee meeting, in front of all of you, and then we take a vote on if we're going to invite that individual into the committee. And so we'll grow our committee over time that way, but you may have questions. We may want to invite that person to that committee meeting to introduce themselves. I mean, we can create some policy around that moving forward. And then they'll sign here as the employer, and then I'll sign here, and then the DAS consultant signs here. And I don't know if Adriana's on the phone, but I believe that's going to be Adriana. That may change. I'm not sure. Things change a lot. So the employer would sign this form, and then they'd sign this pledge form if they're going to be hiring apprentices. Everyone will need to sign this subscription agreement at some point. And then this is the apprentice agreement. So every time you have a new apprentice, that apprentice needs to sign this agreement. It'll have their information, the information regarding the program, and they are acknowledging in this form that they understand what's required of them. They will also receive a copy of the program standards, so they understand what courses they're required to take, and that taking those courses is a condition of their employment. Passing those courses are a condition of their employment. And so this form is sort of alluding to that. So the individual will know what they're signing up for. And so then they execute the form, and then the employer also signs the form. I sign the form, and then the DAS gets the form. They enter that apprentice into the system, into the state system. And then they'll send us back an executed copy of this form, letting them know that apprentice is in the system. And that's the last form. So there is one other form. And that other form is well, there's two other forms, I should say, and I'll show them to you just for, I can show them to you real quick. Give me just a second. And what they are is, let's see, one is considered a cancellation form. It's loading in Excel, so just give me one moment. Okay. And this cancellation is if an apprentice is canceled. And by canceled, I mean terminated. I mean quit. You know, any way where we need to where the Apprenticeship Standards Office needs to cancel them from the system. And so I myself or an employer would communicate to me that that individual's been canceled. We'll probably have a discussion on that within our committee meetings, just to ensure that if we're losing people and training people, you know, what could we be doing better? What, you know, any of that discussion that might need to take place. And then I would submit this form to the state office to cancel the person from the system. The reason why that's important is because we don't want the data to be wrong, and then we also want to ensure if that person were to come back. So for example, we're canceling that person because they went on maternity leave and we don't expect to see them for 6 months. We'll cancel them, and what that will do is stop their training time, and then when they're brought back, we can submit another apprentice agreement form, and then it picks back up. So it cancels them from the system, so the system isn't shooting out data saying this person's been an apprentice for 4 years, what's going on? How come they haven't completed? And that skews the data. So we want to make sure we cancel them and start them appropriately if they were to take some sort of leave. Let's see. Or start another program somewhere else. You know, there's also that. So if you needed to cancel an apprentice, someone else on the committee says, well, I could use an apprentice, and maybe you're in the same location, there may be like a transfer that could take place. It has happened, but in those cases we cancel and then we start a new agreement with the new employer. So that's one other form. And the other form that, and I'll be managing these forms, that everything will be discussed in meetings, is the look for it here in my list. It's the completion form. It's going to happen here in a minute. Where's it at? Anyway, it's a completion form. And so when an apprentice has completed their work hours and completed their school hours, we'll meet as a committee. We'll talk about, okay, who's completing this in the next couple of months, and then hopefully we're tracking. And so that information I can provide and say, here's who we're tracking, who's looking at completing before the next committee meeting. And so we'll take a vote to go ahead and allow those people to complete. I'll indicate those individuals on this completion form, which I'm still looking for. And then, actually, I think I know where I can find it. I'm just trying to get through my, oh, here might be one. See, did I do a completion form for these folks? It doesn't matter. Anyway, I indicate who the completers are going to be, put the completion date on the form, and then I submit it to DAS. They plug it into their system as completions. It generates a certificate of completion from the state of California, and it generates a Journey Person card. And then if the employer, or even as a group, and I know we're all statewide, so it may be a little more difficult, and we can talk later about how maybe we can perform some sort of graduation ceremonies, depending on the numbers. But some employers will have their own. Some employers just, take the person to lunch along with their staff. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that you can celebrate the accomplishment with the apprentice who's completing. In the building trades, I can tell you, they may complete, it depends on the region, but there's regions that complete, say, they'll do like one annual graduation ceremony. So anyone who's completed in that year, there's just one graduation date, and they'll do a huge graduation ceremony. May have like 50 people. Sometimes it's a big dinner and there's contributions. I don't know where they get the money, but they'll do these big dinners, and then apprentices can invite their family members, for the, they treat it like it's getting a degree, because it's sometimes a 4 or 5 year program and a lot of work and a lot of studying. And so it's a huge accomplishment in many cases. So we certainly, if there's a way to honor them, it always helps them to feel more engaged, right? And so that's what those forms look like. So that's just a quick overview of the forms, and we'll do that same overview maybe on the next call after we just kind of look a little deeper into this harassment or no harassment policy. And then we'll just do a final vote on these program standards. And then Miss Adriana at the Division of Apprenticeship Standards will work with me to tie up any loose ends, execute, and then get it up to the headquarters office for DAS, where it might take a month or a couple of months for it to get the final approval from the state. So this is the table of contents. So if you want me to, I can scroll through here one time right now really quickly. It's the, where's that committee? Oh, okay, attachment A. So first we have the program standards, pages 3 to 7. So this is what we've gone over in the last several weeks, is these different articles. And if you don't all have this, I can resend this version today. And then we have the, wow, something's wrong here. Oh, I need to add a line item here that says see attached. Oh, it does say right here, see attachment B. Okay, so these different articles go over a lot of the attachments here. And then you can read through that again. We went through all of that language in our first meeting, some of you will recall. And then attachment A is the committee. So this is everyone on this committee. And then here's the attachment B, which describes what the occupational titles will be, what the minimum probation. So this should say the period of probation. Well, it doesn't matter because the employer can extend it to from 500 to 1,000 hours on the other form. But This talks about how many instructional hours, how it's all broke down. The wage schedule, this is the minimum wage schedule we went over. However, employers can choose a higher wage if they choose on the employer subscription agreement, which we just went through that form. And then the work training we all discussed in a prior meeting, the on-the-job training, and then the instruction, the actual courses that they'll be taking. And again, all of these are online courses that we offer at West Hills to provide that blended learning component of apprenticeship to your employees. And then this is just a local education letter that's required in the packet. So it's my college district committing to providing this free education for apprentices to the employers in the agreement, and then the harassment policy, and then the pledge from employers, the subscription agreement from each employer that wants to participate, and then the apprentice agreement. This agreement is two-sided. The other side, both sides need to be signed by the apprentice. Let me just quickly show you what that might look like. There's a front page, which looks like this. And then there's a back page, which is this questionnaire in regard to just regular EEO. And what this does really is it draws data back to the DAS so they can then share with the apprenticeship community and the state and the feds what the numbers look like in apprenticeship. So how many minorities, how many women, you know, what number of apprentices have dependents, what number of apprentices have completed other college education or other, you know, grade levels. There used to be a question here on veterans. Oh, disabled, this is a new one. So this is an updated form that was revised last year. Okay, and I guess this here might be for those apprentices that may have come in through, say, a workforce connection or America's Job Center or something like that. So if an employer participates in their local workforce development boards programs, then that apprentice may be tied to a program. It's totally optional though, just so you know. That's it. So these are the two sides. This is a specific form for barbers and cosmos. I'm not sure why. If I read it, I'd probably remember. And this is competency-based programs, which I'm not feeling. I'm not feeling that the DAS is real seasoned in just yet. So I didn't want to go that route just yet. So maybe in a couple of years we'll look at, is there a way to do competency-based HR professional program? But for right now, we're just doing the traditional apprenticeship. Any questions? Any concerns?
Looks good to me.
What was that?
I said, Lisa says it looks good.
Oh,
I think
Lisa.
you might have another. Yeah, that's me. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Good. I'm glad that. I'm glad that it is making an impression. I'm always impressed with. I love apprenticeship, but it doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay. So, if you feel like you want to stay on the committee, but you don't really have the buy-in from your employer to offer this program, don't feel bad. You're here now, and we're working together to continue to grow the program. And you never know where you'll be in 2 years or 5 years, where it might be a different scenario. So, and I'll try my best to keep these meetings at the lunch hour if you all feel like that works best for you. It seems like it does, but if it ever isn't, feel free to speak up. Okay, so It's 12:45, and I think we'll just call it good now. And then maybe also I'll get some of the stuff out to you today, and then please send me just send me a separate email with any other verbiage that you'd like to see in the no harassment policy, or do some track change additions or deletions in that if you'd rather, and then send it back to me, and then we'll discuss what you different folks have sent in the next meeting. We'll try to do that within 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll do one last review of everything, and we'll take a vote, and we'll have this submitted. So I'm glad we were able to get through these meetings. It's been really nice. I'm just really glad everybody's showed up and, you know, put in a lot of great feedback and suggestions, and that we're almost done. We're almost done with the bigger part. Okay. Any last words? All right, so I'll see you next week, and expect an email from me today on these last few things. It does look like our meeting next week is on Thursday. I try to, is that right? Thursday, yeah. And I try to mix them up the day of the week, just so everybody gets a chance to try to get on, but there's always going to be the recorded version. So thank you, everybody. Have a nice rest of your week. Thank you. Oh, Carla, are you still on? No, it's okay. Oh, you said yes. So anybody who's still on, Carla's asked a question in the chat box. We'll just try to address it real quick. How long of a cancellation period can someone take? There's no rule. There's no rule on that. So you're welcome. All right, goodbye, everybody. Have a good week.